The gunshot echoed through the mountain pass, just as the temperature dropped below freezing, and Vincent Wade knew somebody was in trouble before he even heard the desperate scream that followed. He had been riding through Nevada territory for 3 days straight, heading toward Elko with a herd of cattle he had promised to deliver before the first snow. The year was 1883, and winter came early in these parts, sweeping down from the mountains with a vengeance that could kill a man in hours if he was not prepared. Vincent pulled his horse to a stop, his breath forming white clouds in the frigid air as he listened intently. Another scream pierced the silence, definitely female, coming from somewhere beyond the rocky outcrop to his left. Without hesitation, he spurred his horse forward, leaving the cattle behind as he navigated the treacherous terrain. His thick wool coat kept most of the cold at bay, but he could feel the bite of wind against his face, harsh and unforgiving. As he rounded the outcrop, he saw them, 3 men on horseback surrounding a stagecoach that had clearly seen better days. One wheel was broken, tilted at an awkward angle, and the driver lay motionless in the dirt. The men were shouting at someone inside the coach, their intentions obviously violent. Vincent reached for his rifle, but before he could aim, one of the men fired another shot into the air. A woman stumbled out of the coach, her hands raised in surrender. Even from this distance, Vincent could see she wore nothing but a thin cotton dress, completely inadequate for the weather. She was shaking violently, whether from fear or cold he could not tell. "Please," her voice carried on the wind, "I have nothing of value, just let me go." The largest of the 3 men dismounted, laughing cruelly. "Well now, that is where you are wrong, missy. A pretty thing like you is valuable indeed. We will fetch a good price for you down in Mexico." Vincent had heard enough. He urged his horse forward, his rifle aimed directly at the leader. "Step away from her," he called out, his voice steady and commanding. "This is your only warning." The 3 men spun around, clearly surprised to find they were not alone. The leader narrowed his eyes, assessing Vincent with the practiced gaze of someone accustomed to violence. "This is none of your business, stranger. Ride on if you know what is good for you." "Cannot do that," Vincent replied calmly. "The lady is coming with me. You 3 are going to mount up and ride in the opposite direction. Right now." The tension hung thick in the air for several long seconds. Vincent could see the calculations running through the leader's mind, weighing the odds. Finally, the man spat in the dirt and gestured to his companions. "This is not worth dying over, but you watch your back, cowboy. We do not forget." They mounted their horses and rode off toward the south, casting threatening glances over their shoulders. Vincent kept his rifle trained on them until they disappeared from view, then quickly dismounted and approached the woman. She had collapsed to her knees in the dirt, still shaking uncontrollably. Her lips had taken on a bluish tint, and her fingers were white from the cold. Without a word, Vincent shrugged off his heavy coat and draped it around her shoulders. She looked up at him with wide eyes, brown as chestnuts and filled with something he could not quite identify. Shock, certainly, but also a deep, profound confusion. "You are freezing," he said gently, helping her to her feet. "We need to get you somewhere warm." She pulled the coat tighter around herself, and he watched as the smallest tremor of warmth seemed to register on her face. Then she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper, cracking with emotion. "Nobody has been kind before." The words struck Vincent harder than any physical blow could have. He studied her face more carefully now. She could not have been more than 23 or 24 years old, with dark hair that had come loose from its pins and tangled around her pale face. There were bruises on her arms, some fresh, some faded to yellow, and her dress, though torn and dirty now, had once been of decent quality. "What is your name?" he asked softly. She hesitated, as if the question itself was a trap. Finally, she answered. Natalie Carson. Vincent Wade, he replied. Can you ride? She nodded shakily. He glanced at the stagecoach driver, confirming what he had already suspected. The man was dead, shot through the chest. There was nothing to be done for him. The horses that had pulled the stage were gone, likely spooked by the gunfire, and long fled. I need to get my cattle, Vincent explained. They are just beyond that ridge. Then we will head for Elko. It is only about 15 miles from here. Can you hold on that long? I will manage, Natalie said, though her teeth were still chattering despite the warmth of his coat. Vincent helped her onto his horse, then swung up behind her. She was so thin he could feel her ribs through the fabric of her dress and his coat. He made a mental note to get food into her as soon as possible. He retrieved his cattle, grateful they had not wandered far, and began the journey toward Elko with Natalie sitting in front of him, his arms on either side of her as he held the reins. For the first hour, neither of them spoke. Vincent could feel the tension gradually leaving her body as she absorbed his body heat and the warmth of the coat. The sun was beginning to set, painting the Nevada sky in shades of orange and purple, and the temperature continued to drop. He knew they needed to make good time. Being caught out here after dark in these conditions would be dangerous, even with proper clothing. Thank you, Natalie finally said, breaking the silence, for helping me. Most people would have ridden past. Most people are not worth much then, Vincent replied simply. What happened back there? Where were you heading? She was quiet for a long moment, and he thought perhaps she would not answer. Then the words came tumbling out as if a dam had broken. I was leaving. Running away, really, from Sacramento. I was married to a man there, Silas Carson. He was not a good man. Vincent felt her body tense at the mention of the name, saw her hands grip the edge of his coat more tightly. He waited, giving her space to continue at her own pace. He owned a saloon, she went on. I thought when I married him that I would have a decent life. He seemed respectable enough during our courtship, but after the wedding, everything changed. He drank constantly. He had a terrible temper. He would hit me whenever something displeased him, which was often. Vincent felt anger rising in his chest, but he kept his voice gentle. How long were you married to him? 3 years. 3 long years. I tried to leave twice before, but he always found me. He had friends everywhere, men who owed him favors or feared him. Last week, I heard him talking with one of his associates about selling me to a brothel in San Francisco. He was in debt, you see, gambling debts mostly. He figured I could work off what he owed. So you ran, Vincent said. I waited until he passed out drunk, took what little money I could find, and bought a ticket on that stage. I was supposed to make it to Elko, then take the train east to Missouri. My aunt lives there. I thought maybe she would take me in, help me get a divorce somehow. She laughed bitterly. I should have known it would not be that easy. Those men who stopped the stage, they were not random thieves. Silas must have sent them. Did you recognize them? No, but the things they said. The way they knew I would be on that stage, it had to be him. Vincent considered this information carefully. If her husband had sent men after her once, he would likely send more. But Elko was a growing town with a decent sheriff. They would be safer there than out in the open, and the train did run through Elko. If Natalie wanted to continue to Missouri, she could still do so. We will get you to Elko safely, he assured her. And then you can decide what you want to do next. Nobody will force you into anything. She turned her head slightly to look at him, and in the fading light he could see tears glistening in her eyes. Why are you helping me? You do not know me. I could be lying about everything. You are not lying, Vincent said with certainty. I can see the truth in the bruises on your arms and the fear in your eyes. Besides, Even if you were lying, no woman deserves to be kidnapped or to freeze to death in the mountains. It is the decent thing to do." "Decency is rarer than you might think," Natalie said quietly, turning back to face forward. They rode in silence for another hour. The lights of Elko began to appear in the distance, warm and welcoming against the darkening sky. Vincent felt Natalie relax slightly at the sight. The town was bustling even as night fell, with sounds of music and laughter drifting from various establishments. Vincent guided his horse down the main street, the cattle following behind, until they reached the livery stable. The owner, a grizzled old man named Pete, greeted him warmly. "Vincent Wade, been expecting you with those cattle. Weather turned bad awful quick." "That it did," Vincent agreed, dismounting and then helping Natalie down. She wavered slightly on her feet, exhausted from the ordeal and the cold. "Pete, can you handle getting these cattle settled?" "I need to see to some urgent business." Pete glanced at Natalie, taking in her appearance with shrewd eyes but asking no questions. "Sure thing. You go on ahead." Vincent kept a supportive hand on Natalie's elbow as he guided her down the street to the boarding house run by a respectable widow named Mrs. Patterson. The older woman answered the door quickly, her expression shifting from curiosity to concern as she saw Natalie's condition. "My goodness, what has happened here?" she asked, ushering them both inside where a fire crackled warmly in the hearth. "This is Natalie Carson," Vincent explained. "She was attacked on the road. Her stagecoach driver was killed and she has been exposed to the cold for hours. She needs a warm room, hot food, and medical attention if you can arrange it." Mrs. Patterson was already moving, all efficient kindness. "Of course. Come with me, dear. Let us get you warm and fed. Dr. Morrison is just down the street. I will send my boy to fetch him." Natalie looked back at Vincent with something like panic in her eyes, as if afraid he would disappear. "Will you stay?" "I will be right here," he promised. "I am not going anywhere." Mrs. Patterson led Natalie upstairs while Vincent waited in the sitting room. He realized he was still without his coat, having given it to Natalie, but the warmth of the fire was sufficient. He found himself thinking about what she had said, about nobody being kind to her before. What kind of life had she lived where a simple act of human decency seemed so extraordinary? About 30 minutes later, Dr. Morrison arrived, a middle-aged man with gentle eyes and competent hands. He went upstairs to examine Natalie, while Mrs. Patterson came down to speak with Vincent. "That poor girl," she said, shaking her head. "She has been through something terrible. Those bruises are not fresh, but there are enough of them, and she is half-starved. Her husband used to beat her," Vincent said quietly. "She was running away from him. The men who attacked the stagecoach were likely sent by him to bring her back." Mrs. Patterson's expression hardened. "Well, she is safe here now. I will look after her. But Vincent, if those men come looking for her in town, there could be trouble." "I know," he replied. "Tomorrow I will speak with Sheriff Daniels, explain the situation. If anyone comes asking about her, they need to be turned away." The doctor came down a short while later, reporting that Natalie would be fine physically. She was suffering from exposure and exhaustion, but nothing a few days of rest and proper meals would not cure. The emotional wounds, he suggested with a meaningful look, would take much longer to heal. Vincent paid for Natalie's room for the next week, ignoring her weak protests when Mrs. Patterson told her. "You concentrate on recovering," he told her firmly. "Do not worry about the cost." Natalie looked at him from where she sat bundled in blankets near the fire, his coat still draped around her shoulders. She seemed reluctant to give it back, as if it represented safety itself. "I will pay you back somehow," she insisted. "I do not know how, but I will." "There is no debt," Vincent said. "Just get well." He left shortly after, finding himself a room at the hotel next door. Sleep came slowly that night. He kept thinking about Natalie's eyes, the way they had looked so shocked by simple kindness. He thought about her husband, this Silas Carson, and felt a fresh surge of anger. Vincent had never understood men who raised their hands to women. It went against everything he believed about strength and honor. The next morning, Vincent went straight to the sheriff's office. Sheriff Daniels was a fair man, known for his integrity in a town where such qualities were not always common. Vincent explained the situation, leaving out no details. "So you think this husband of hers might send more men?" Daniels asked, leaning back in his chair. "I do," Vincent confirmed. "The men yesterday knew which stagecoach she would be on. They were not random bandits. They were hired specifically to retrieve her. And she wants a divorce from this man, she does. But I do not know how easy that will be to obtain." Daniels nodded thoughtfully. "Divorce is tricky business, especially if the husband contests it. But if she can prove cruelty, beatings, there is grounds for it. We have a lawyer in town, Marcus Webb. He has handled such cases before. Perhaps she should speak with him." Vincent agreed to pass along the suggestion. He spent the rest of the morning completing his business with the cattle sale, which went smoothly despite the delay. The buyer was understanding about the circumstances and paid Vincent fairly. With that business concluded, Vincent found himself with no pressing obligations, and several weeks before he needed to be anywhere else. He returned to the boarding house around midday, finding Natalie awake and looking considerably better than she had the night before. Mrs. Patterson had provided her with a proper dress, dark blue wool that fit reasonably well, and her hair had been washed and pinned back. The bruises were still visible on her arms and face, but color had returned to her cheeks. "You look better," Vincent said, pleased to see the improvement. "I feel better," she admitted. "Mrs. Patterson has been incredibly kind. She fed me breakfast and did not ask too many questions." She paused, then added quietly, "You still have not asked me to repay you." "Because I do not expect repayment," Vincent said, taking a seat across from her in the sitting room. "Natalie, I spoke with the sheriff this morning. He suggested you meet with a lawyer named Marcus Webb. If you want to divorce your husband, Webb might be able to help you." Hope flickered across her face, immediately followed by fear. "Silas will never agree to a divorce. He will fight it, and he has money for lawyers." "But you have the truth on your side," Vincent countered, "and evidence of his cruelty. That counts for something, does it?" Natalie asked bitterly. "I have learned that money and influence count for much more than truth in this world." Vincent could not entirely argue with that, having seen plenty of injustice in his own life. But he believed in fighting regardless. "It is worth trying. What other option do you have? You cannot hide forever. If you truly want to be free of him, you need to make it legal." She considered this for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "You are right. I will speak with this lawyer, but Vincent, I need to be honest with you, I have very little money. Certainly not enough to pay for a lawyer." "We will figure something out," Vincent assured her. "One step at a time." They visited Marcus Webb that afternoon. The lawyer was a youngish man, probably in his early 30s, with an earnest manner and intelligent eyes. He listened carefully as Natalie explained her situation, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When she finished, he sat back in his chair and steepled his fingers. "Mrs. Carson, I will be honest with you. What you are asking is not impossible, but it will be difficult. Nevada law does allow for divorce on grounds of cruelty, but you will need to provide evidence. The bruises help, but they will heal. Do you have any witnesses who can testify to your husband's treatment of you?" Natalie thought hard. "There was a woman who worked in the saloon, Clara. She saw him hit me more than once. She tried to help me, gave me money for the stagecoach ticket, but I do not know if she would be willing to testify. She needs her job, and Silas would certainly fire her if she spoke against him. We can at least try to reach out to her, Webb said. And there is the fact that your husband apparently sent men to kidnap you, which resulted in the murder of a stagecoach driver. If we can prove that connection, it strengthens your case considerably. The men got away, Vincent interjected, but the sheriff in Elko knows what happened. He can document it, Webb nodded. Good, that is a start. Mrs. Carson, I will take your case. As for payment, I am willing to work on a contingency basis. If we win, you pay me a percentage of whatever settlement we can negotiate. If we lose, you owe me nothing. Natalie looked stunned. You would do that? I would, Webb confirmed. I have a particular distaste for men who abuse their wives. Consider it a matter of principle. They spent the next hour discussing strategy and signing the necessary paperwork. By the time they left Webb's office, Natalie seemed lighter somehow, as if a burden had been lifted. Vincent walked with her back to the boarding house as the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the street. I cannot believe how much has changed in just one day, Natalie said softly. Yesterday I thought I was going to die in those mountains or be dragged back to Silas. Today I have hope. You deserve hope, Vincent said. Everyone does. She stopped walking and turned to face him fully. Why are you doing all this? You have already done so much. You saved my life, paid for my room, introduced me to the lawyer. You do not even know me. Vincent met her gaze steadily. Maybe I want to know you. Something shifted in the air between them, a awareness that had been building since the moment he had placed his coat around her shoulders. Natalie looked away first, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. I am still married, she said quietly. Legally, at least. I know, Vincent replied. I am not asking for anything, I am just being honest. They continued walking in silence, but it was a comfortable silence now, charged with possibility. Over the next few days, Vincent found himself spending more and more time with Natalie. He showed her around Elko, introduced her to the people he knew in town, and slowly, she began to relax. The constant tension that had marked her posture started to ease. She smiled more, even laughed occasionally. Mrs. Patterson proved to be an excellent advocate, spreading the word among the respectable women in town about Natalie's situation. Within a week, Natalie had offers of work from several establishments. She chose to help Mrs. Patterson at the boarding house, earning her keep while waiting for the legal proceedings to move forward. Marcus Webb worked diligently on her case. He managed to track down Clara, the woman from the saloon in Sacramento, and she agreed to provide a written statement, though she was too afraid to testify in person. Webb also found the bodies where the stagecoach had been attacked and arranged for the murder to be officially investigated. Though the men responsible had vanished, Vincent should have moved on. His business in Elko was concluded, and he had no particular reason to stay, but he found reasons. He took a temporary job at one of the local ranches, breaking horses and mending fences. It paid decent wages and gave him an excuse to remain in town. The truth was, he could not leave Natalie. Not yet. Maybe not ever. They fell into a pattern. Most evenings, after they had both finished their work, they would meet for dinner at the boarding house or take walks through town. They talked about everything and nothing. She told him about growing up in Missouri, about her parents who had died when she was young, about the aunt she hoped to one day visit again. He told her about his life as a cowboy, the places he had seen, the dreams he carried of someday having his own ranch. I saved most of what I earned over the years, he explained one evening as they sat on the porch of the boarding house, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. I have enough to buy land and some cattle. I have been looking for the right place, somewhere with good water and grazing. That sounds wonderful, Natalie said wistfully, having a place that is truly your own. Have you thought about what you want to do? Vincent asked. After the divorce is finalized, she was quiet for a moment. I have thought about going to Missouri to my aunt. But honestly, I have also thought about staying here. I like Elko. The people have been kind. Mrs. Patterson said I could continue working for her as long as I want, and there is you. Her last words hung in the air between them. Vincent turned to look at her and found her already watching him with those expressive brown eyes. There is me, he agreed softly. Vincent, I need to say something, Natalie began, her voice uncertain. I know I am not free yet, not truly. But I want you to know that these past weeks with you have been the happiest of my life. You make me feel safe. You make me laugh. When I am with you, I can almost forget about Silas and everything that happened. You do not need to say anything, Vincent started, but she shook her head. I do need to say it. I need you to know how I feel. I am falling in love with you, Vincent Wade. Maybe I already have fallen, and it terrifies me because I do not want to bring trouble into your life. Vincent reached out and took her hand, feeling how small and delicate it was in his own calloused palm. Natalie, I have been in love with you since the moment you said nobody had been kind to you before. It broke my heart and made me want to spend the rest of my life proving that statement wrong. I do not care about trouble, I care about you. She made a small sound, half laugh and half sob, and then she was in his arms. He held her carefully, conscious of how fragile she still seemed despite the progress she had made. They stayed like that for a long time, wrapped in each other's warmth as the night grew cold around them. When I am free, Natalie whispered against his chest, when the divorce is final and I am truly my own person again, I would very much like to see where this goes between us. I will wait as long as it takes, Vincent promised. The weeks turned into months. Winter settled firmly over Nevada, bringing snow and freezing temperatures. The legal proceedings moved slowly, complicated by Silas Carson's refusal to cooperate. He denied all allegations of abuse and refused to agree to a divorce under any circumstances. Marcus Webb persisted, building the case carefully and methodically. Then, in early December, something happened that changed everything. A man arrived in Elko, asking questions about Natalie Carson. Sheriff Daniels, who had been briefed to watch for exactly this sort of thing, detained the man for questioning. Under pressure, the man admitted he had been hired by Silas Carson to find his wife and bring her back to Sacramento by force if necessary. This was the break they needed. With the man's testimony, Webb was able to prove that Silas had not only been abusive, but had also attempted to kidnap his wife, and was connected to the murder of the stagecoach driver. Faced with potential criminal charges, Silas finally agreed to grant Natalie a divorce in exchange for those charges being dropped. Marcus Webb came to the boarding house on a cold afternoon in late December with the papers. "It is done," he announced, his face breaking into a wide smile. "You are divorced, Mrs. Carson, or rather you are no longer Mrs. Carson, you are a free woman." Natalie stared at the papers in disbelief, tears streaming down her face. "I am free, you are free," Webb confirmed. "Silas has signed everything. The divorce is legal and binding. He cannot touch you anymore." Vincent, who had been present for the delivery of the news, felt a wave of relief so powerful it nearly knocked him over. Natalie turned to him, her face radiant despite the tears, and he opened his arms. She flew into them, and he lifted her off her feet, spinning her around while she laughed and cried simultaneously. "Thank you," she kept saying, to Webb, to Vincent, to Mrs. Patterson, who had rushed in at the commotion. "Thank you so much." That evening, Vincent took Natalie to the nicest restaurant in Elko. It was not particularly fancy by big city standards, but it was clean and warm, and the food was good. They sat across from each other, and Vincent noticed how different she looked now from the terrified, frozen woman he had found in the mountains months ago. She was still thin, but healthy now. Her eyes sparkled with life. She moved without fear. "I have something to ask you," Vincent said, his heart pounding. He had been planning this for weeks, waiting for this moment. "I found some land about 20 miles from here. It has a creek running through it, good grass, timber for building. I put money down on it last week. I am going to build a ranch there." "Vincent, that is wonderful," Natalie said, genuinely pleased for him. "I want you to come with me," he continued. "As my wife. Natalie, I know this is fast, and I know you just got free from one marriage. But what I feel for you is nothing like what you had before. I love you. I want to build a life with you. I want to wake up next to you every morning and go to sleep beside you every night. I want to grow old with you." He pulled out a ring, simple gold with a small stone. "It is not much," he admitted, "but it is honest, like I hope we can be with each other." Natalie was crying again, but she was smiling too. "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Yes, Vincent, I love you too. I want all of those things with you." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and they kissed across the table, not caring who saw or what anyone thought. They were in love and they were free, and the future stretched before them full of possibility. They married in January of 1884, a small ceremony at the church in Elko with Mrs. Patterson, Marcus Webb, Sheriff Daniels, and a few other friends in attendance. Natalie wore a dress of pale blue that Mrs. Patterson had helped her sew, and Vincent wore his best suit. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Vincent kissed her with such tenderness that several people in attendance wiped away tears. "Nobody has been kind before," Natalie whispered to him as they left the church. "But you have taught me what kindness truly is, what love truly is. We will be kind to each other every day for the rest of our lives," Vincent promised. They spent their wedding night at the hotel in Elko, and the next morning began the work of building their ranch. Vincent had already started construction on a house with help from some of the men in town. It was a modest structure, but solid and well built, with 2 bedrooms and a large main room with a fireplace. Natalie threw herself into making it a home, sewing curtains, arranging furniture, planting a garden spot for when spring came. The work was hard, but they were happy. They worked side by side from dawn until dusk, breaking horses, tending cattle, mending fences, building barns. At night they fell into bed exhausted but content, wrapped in each other's arms. Natalie proved to be stronger than she looked, with a determination that impressed Vincent daily. She learned to ride well, to rope cattle, to shoot a rifle for protection against predators. "I never knew I could do any of this," she said one evening after successfully breaking her first horse to saddle. "Sila's always told me I was useless, that I could not do anything right." "Sila's was a fool and a liar," Vincent said firmly. "You are one of the strongest people I have ever known. What you survived, what you overcame, that takes real strength." In the spring, they acquired more cattle and Vincent hired 2 ranch hands to help with the work. The ranch began to prosper. They named it the Wade Ranch, marking the entrance with a simple wooden sign that Vincent carved himself. Natalie established a vegetable garden that flourished in the Nevada soil, and she began raising chickens for eggs and meat. In June, Natalie discovered she was pregnant. She told Vincent one evening after supper, watching his face carefully for his reaction. He was silent for a moment, processing the news, and then a smile broke across his face so wide and genuine that it made her heart soar. "A baby," he said, his voice full of wonder. "We are going to have a baby." "We are," she confirmed, laughing as he picked her up and spun her around. much as he had done when she received her divorce papers. "I am going to be a father," he kept saying, as if he could not quite believe it. "I am going to be a father." He was immediately protective, insisting she not work too hard, worrying constantly about her health. Natalie found his concern endearing, though she had to remind him frequently that pregnancy was not an illness. She continued to work on the ranch, though she did scale back the more strenuous activities as her belly grew. In February of 1885, during a fierce snowstorm that trapped them inside for 3 days, Natalie went into labor. Vincent rode through the storm to fetch Mrs. Patterson, who had experience as a midwife. The labor was long and difficult, testing Natalie's strength to its limits. Vincent stayed by her side the entire time, holding her hand, wiping her forehead, offering what comfort he could. Finally, as dawn broke and the storm began to clear, their son was born. He came into the world screaming lustily, healthy and strong. Vincent cut the cord with shaking hands, overcome with emotion as he held his son for the first time. "He is perfect," he said, tears streaming down his face. "Natalie, he is absolutely perfect." They named him Thomas, after Vincent's father. Tommy, as they called him, proved to be an easy baby, content and curious about the world around him. Vincent was a devoted father, spending every spare moment with his son, teaching him things even when the baby was far too young to understand. Watching Vincent with their son, Natalie felt a contentment she had never imagined possible. This was what family was supposed to be. This was what love looked like. Not violence and fear, but tenderness and support and shared joy. "You remember what you said that first night?" Vincent asked her one evening as they sat on their porch, watching Tommy play with wooden blocks Vincent had carved for him. "You said nobody had been kind before." "I remember," Natalie said softly. "Does anyone tell you they love you now?" he asked with a gentle smile. "Every single day," she replied, leaning against him. "You tell me every single day." "And I will continue to do so for the rest of our lives," Vincent promised. The ranch continued to grow and prosper over the next several years. They acquired more land, more cattle, more horses. Vincent's reputation as an honest rancher and skilled horseman spread throughout the territory. Natalie became known in Elko for her generosity and kindness, often taking in women who found themselves in situations similar to what she had escaped. In 1887, they welcomed a daughter, whom they named Mary. She had her mother's brown eyes and her father's determination. Tommy, now 2 years old, was fascinated by his baby sister and appointed himself her protector. In 1889, another son arrived, whom they named Samuel. The house that had once seemed spacious now rang with the sounds of children playing, laughing, occasionally arguing. Vincent added on to the original structure, building more bedrooms and a larger kitchen. Natalie kept her vegetable garden and added flower beds around the house, wanting beauty as well as practicality. Life was not without its challenges. There were hard winters that killed cattle, dry summers that threatened crops, illnesses that scared them, accidents that required the doctor from Elko to make the journey to the ranch. But they faced everything together, supporting each other through difficulties and celebrating victories both large and small. In the summer of 1891, they received unexpected news. Natalie's aunt in Missouri had passed away, leaving everything to Natalie in her will. It was not a fortune, but it was a substantial sum of money and a house in a good neighborhood. Natalie was saddened by the loss but grateful for the inheritance. "We could use this money to expand the ranch," Vincent suggested. "Buy that land to the north we have been looking at." But Natalie had a different idea. "I want to open a home," she said, "for women like me, women who are trying to escape abusive situations, We could buy a building in Elko, fix it up, provide a safe place for them to stay while they figure out their next steps. We could help them the way Marcus Webb and Mrs. Patterson and you helped me." Vincent looked at his wife with admiration and love. "That is a perfect idea," he said. "Let us do it." They purchased a large house on the outskirts of Elko and spent months renovating it. Natalie oversaw every detail, determined to create a space that felt safe and welcoming. When it opened in the spring of 1892, they called it the Carson House, using Natalie's maiden name. It could house up to 10 women at a time, providing them with shelter, food, medical care, and legal assistance. Natalie spent at least 3 days a week in Elko, managing the house and working with the women who came there. She understood their fear and pain in a way that few others could. She knew how to be patient, how to listen, how to help without judgment. Many women passed through the Carson house over the years, and most of them rebuilt their lives successfully with the support they found there. Vincent was immensely proud of his wife and her work. He helped financially and offered protection when needed, making it clear that any man who came to the Carson house looking to harm the women inside would have to go through him first. His reputation was such that few were willing to test that threat. The children grew. Tommy showed an aptitude for ranching that pleased Vincent greatly. He was good with horses and cattle, patient, and skilled beyond his years. Mary proved to be academic, devouring every book she could get her hands on and pestering her parents for more education than the small schoolhouse in Elko could provide. Samuel was the adventurer, always exploring, always asking questions, always getting into minor trouble. In 1895, Natalie found herself pregnant again, unexpectedly, at the age of 36. She had thought her childbearing years were behind her, but apparently nature had other plans. This pregnancy was harder than the previous ones, and both she and Vincent worried. But in the spring of 1896, she delivered a healthy baby girl whom they named Grace. "She is our Grace baby," Natalie said, holding the infant close. "A blessing we did not expect but are so grateful for." Tommy was now 11, old enough to be a real help on the ranch. Mary was 9, already talking about going to a proper school in California someday. Samuel was 7, full of energy and mischief. And now Grace completed their family. Sometimes, on quiet evenings when the children were asleep and they sat together on the porch watching the sun set over their land, Vincent and Natalie would talk about how far they had come. "You ever think about that night?" Vincent asked one such evening. "When I found you in the mountains?" "I think about it often," Natalie admitted. "I think about how close I came to dying, either from the cold or from those men. I think about how you appeared like an answer to a prayer I had not even known how to voice." "I was just doing what was right," Vincent said, as he always did when she thanked him. "No," Natalie disagreed gently. "You did what was kind. And kindness is a choice, Vincent. You chose to help me when you could have ridden past. You chose to give me your coat when you needed it yourself. You chose to stay with me, to help me, to love me. Those were all choices, and I am grateful for every one of them." Vincent pulled her close, marveling as he always did at how perfectly she fit against him. "You made choices too," he pointed out. "You chose to leave a bad situation even though it was terrifying. You chose to trust me when you had no reason to trust anyone. You chose to build a new life. You chose to help other women in the same situation. Those were brave choices, Natalie." "We chose each other," Natalie said simply. "And that was the best choice of all." The years continued to pass, marked by the rhythms of ranch life and family. Tommy married at 21, bringing home a sweet girl named Elizabeth from a neighboring ranch. They built a house on Wade land, and Tommy began taking over more of the ranch operations as Vincent started to slow down. Mary did indeed go to school in San Francisco, graduating with honors and becoming a teacher. Samuel left for a few years to see the world, working on cattle drives and exploring the changing West, but eventually returned to the ranch, unable to stay away from the land he loved. Grace grew into a strong-willed young woman with her mother's compassion and her father's determination. She worked alongside Natalie at the Carson house, showing the same dedication to helping vulnerable women that her mother had pioneered. In 1910, Vincent and Natalie celebrated their 26th wedding anniversary. Their children and grandchildren gathered at the ranch for a party, and the house rang with laughter and music. Vincent watched his family, feeling a contentment so deep it was almost painful. This, he thought, was what life was supposed to be about. Not wealth or fame or power, but love and family and building something meaningful. That night, after everyone had gone home or to bed, Vincent and Natalie took their familiar seats on the porch. They were older now, both in their early 50s, with gray threading through their hair and lines on their faces. But when Vincent looked at his wife, he saw the same woman he had fallen in love with all those years ago in the Nevada mountains. "Nobody has been kind before," Natalie said softly, repeating the words she had spoken on that long-ago night. Vincent smiled, knowing what she was doing. "And what would you say now?" he asked. "I would say that I have been loved every day since," Natalie replied. "That I have been cherished and respected and supported. That I found not just kindness but a home, a family, a purpose. That my life began the night a cowboy offered his coat to a shivering stranger." "My life began that night too," Vincent said. "I just did not know it yet." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, holding hands as they had done countless times over the years. The stars emerged one by one, painting the Nevada sky with points of light. In the distance, they could hear cattle lowing and horses moving in the corral. These were the sounds of home. "Do you have any regrets?" Natalie asked suddenly. Vincent considered the question seriously. "No," he said finally. "Not a single one. Everything I have done, every choice I have made since that night, I would make again exactly the same way. You, our children, this life we have built together, it is everything I ever wanted, even when I did not know I wanted it." "Me too," Natalie said. "I regret the years with Silas, the pain I endured, but even those brought me to you. They taught me to recognize real love when I found it. They made me strong enough to help other women find their way out of darkness, so even those dark years had purpose." "You are an amazing woman," Vincent said, as he had said so many times before. "I am an amazing woman because I was given the chance to be," Natalie corrected. "Because you saw something in me worth saving when I could not see it myself." As they sat together under the stars, surrounded by the life they had built through love and determination and simple human kindness, both of them felt the profound gratitude that comes from having found exactly where they belong. The ranch would continue. Their children would carry on their legacy. The Carson house would keep helping women for years to come. But in that moment, it was just the two of them, a cowboy and the woman he had saved, who had saved him in return. They had taken a single act of kindness on a frozen mountain night and transformed it into something beautiful and lasting. They had created a family, a home, a legacy of compassion that would outlive them both. In 1915, Tommy and Elizabeth presented Vincent and Natalie with their first great-grandchild, a boy they named Vincent Wade, Jr. Holding the baby, Vincent felt the circle of life completing itself. He was 60 years old now, his body worn from decades of hard ranch work, but his heart was full. "Look what we made," Natalie said softly, standing beside him as they both gazed at the sleeping infant. Not just this baby, but all of it. Our children, our grandchildren, the ranch, the Carson house. We built all of this from nothing but love. Not from nothing, Vincent corrected gently. From kindness. From the simple decision to help someone who needed help. Everything good in my life flows from that moment. Natalie leaned against him and he wrapped his free arm around her, careful not to disturb the baby. "Thank you," she said, "for that coat, for your kindness, for choosing me." "Thank you for letting me," Vincent replied, "for trusting me, for loving me, for building this beautiful life with me." In 1920, both Vincent and Natalie were in their 60s, slowing down but still active in their respective passions. Vincent spent most of his time advising Tommy on the ranch, enjoying his grandchildren, and working with the horses he loved. Natalie continued her work at the Carson house, though she had trained Grace and several other women to handle most of the daily operations. They had been married for 36 years, together for nearly 37. It was a cold November evening, much like that first night, when they sat on their porch wrapped in blankets, watching the stars. "If you could go back," Vincent asked, "and tell that frightened woman in the mountains anything, what would you say?" Natalie thought for a long moment. "I would tell her to hold on," she said finally. "That the kindness of one person can change everything, that she is stronger than she knows, that love is real, that it exists, and that she will find it. I would tell her that all the pain she has endured will make sense someday, that it will give her the strength and compassion to help countless other women. I would tell her that her story does not end in those mountains. It begins there." "That is beautiful," Vincent said, his voice rough with emotion. "What would you tell that cowboy?" Natalie asked. "The one who saw a stranger in trouble and stopped to help." "I would tell him that coat he is about to give away is the best investment he will ever make," Vincent said with a smile. "That the woman shivering in the cold will become his whole world. That helping her will lead to more happiness than he can imagine. I would tell him not to hesitate, not even for a second, because that decision will define the rest of his life in the best possible way." They stayed on the porch late into the night, reminiscing and planning and simply being together. Their love had not dimmed with time. If anything, it had grown deeper, richer, more profound. They knew each other completely now, every strength and weakness, every joy and sorrow. And they loved each other not despite these things, but because of them. The Carson house continued to thrive, helping hundreds of women over the years. Many of them went on to build successful, independent lives. Some got divorced and remarried happily. Others chose to remain single, finding fulfillment in work and friendships. A few came to work at the house themselves, wanting to give back the help they had received. The house became known throughout Nevada and the surrounding territories as a place of genuine refuge and support. Vincent and Natalie's children all succeeded in their own ways. Tommy ran the ranch with skill and integrity, expanding it even further than his father had. Mary returned from California with a husband and children of her own, opening a school in Elko that provided quality education to children from all backgrounds. Samuel, after his adventuring years, settled down and opened a horse breeding operation that became renowned throughout the West. Grace eventually took over full operation of the Carson house, dedicating her life to continuing her mother's work. In the summer of 1925, the town of Elko organized a celebration in honor of Vincent and Natalie Wade. It was nominally for their 41st wedding anniversary, but really it was a recognition of everything they had contributed to the community over the decades. The town square was decorated with banners and streamers, and it seemed like everyone in the county had turned out for the event. Speaker after speaker told stories about the Wades. about Vincent's honesty and hard work, his skill with horses, his willingness to help neighbors in need. About Natalie's compassion and determination, the countless women whose lives had been changed by the Carson house, her generosity and wisdom. Grown women stood up and testified to how the Carson house had saved their lives, given them hope when they had none. Vincent and Natalie sat together through it all, holding hands and occasionally wiping away tears. Their children and grandchildren surrounded them, 3 generations of Wades, all of whom existed because a cowboy had given his coat to a freezing stranger 42 years ago. When it came time for them to speak, Vincent stood slowly, helped to his feet by Tommy. He was 70 years old now, his hair white, his movements careful, but his eyes were still bright and his voice was still strong as he addressed the crowd. "I am not a man of many words," he began, and there was laughter from the crowd who knew this to be true. "But I want to say something. People keep thanking me today for things I have done, for contributions I have made to this community. But the truth is, I did not do much of anything special. I just helped someone who needed help. I just tried to be decent. It was Natalie who did the real work. She took her pain and turned it into purpose. She took her suffering and used it to ease the suffering of others. Everything good that has come from our lives together comes from her strength and her compassion." He turned to look at his wife, and the love in his expression made several people in the crowd tear up. "Natalie, you are the best thing that ever happened to me. You are the reason for everything good in my life. I love you more today than I did 41 years ago, and I will love you more tomorrow than I do today. Thank you for choosing me. Thank you for building this life with me." The crowd erupted in applause as Vincent sat down. Then Natalie stood, waving away offers of help. At 66, she was still strong and independent, her spirit as fierce as ever even if her body had slowed. "Vincent says I turned pain into purpose," she began, her voice carrying clearly across the square. "But I could only do that because he gave me the foundation to build on. He gave me safety when I had none. He gave me love when I thought such a thing did not exist. He gave me the courage to face my fears and the support to help others face theirs. Vincent Wade is the best man I have ever known, and I thank God every day for the storm that brought us together." She paused, looking out at the crowd. "I know there are women here today who have come through the Carson house. I see you. I know your courage. I want you to know that you can build lives as full and beautiful as mine has been. Do not let your past define your future. Find your people. Build your family, whether that is family by blood or family by choice. And never forget that one act of kindness can change everything." The applause this time was thunderous. As Vincent and Natalie sat back down, surrounded by love and community, they shared a look that needed no words. They had done well. They had lived well. They had loved well. As the years passed into the late 1920s, both Vincent and Natalie began to slow down significantly. Vincent finally retired fully from ranch work, content to sit on the porch and watch Tommy and his grandsons handle the operations. Natalie handed over the Carson house completely to Grace, though she still visited regularly to offer advice and encouragement. They spent their days together, these two people who had found each other against all odds. They took slow walks around their property, remembering when they had built each barn and fence. They played with their great-grandchildren, telling stories about the old days. They sat on their porch in the evenings, wrapped in blankets, holding hands and watching the stars just as they had done for over 4 decades. "I have been thinking," Natalie said one evening in the fall of 1929, "about that night in the mountains." "We have had a lot of evenings to think about it," Vincent said with a gentle smile. "You think you would have stopped?" she asked. "If you had known everything that would follow, All the complexity and challenges, raising children, building a ranch, dealing with my past. Vincent did not hesitate. Yes, he said firmly. 1,000 times yes. Every challenge was worth it. Every difficult moment led to joy. I would not change a single thing. Not even the time Samuel broke his arm falling out of the barn loft, Natalie teased. Not even that, Vincent confirmed. Because it taught him to be more careful and it showed us how brave he could be. Every moment, good and bad, has been part of our story. I treasure all of it. Natalie squeezed his hand. I love you, Vincent Wade. I have loved you for more than 45 years, and I will love you beyond this life. And I love you, Natalie Wade. You are my heart. Vincent passed away peacefully in his sleep in January of 1930 at the age of 75. He simply did not wake up one morning, his heart having given out after a long and well-lived life. Natalie was devastated but not surprised. He had been slowing down for months, his body finally giving in to the years of hard work and advancing age. The funeral was one of the largest Elko had ever seen. People came from all over Nevada and the surrounding states to pay their respects to a man who had lived with integrity and kindness. Tommy gave the eulogy, talking about his father's honesty, his work ethic, his devotion to family, and his unshakable moral compass. But it was Natalie who had the last word. Standing at her husband's grave, supported by her children, she spoke to the assembled crowd. Vincent Wade saved my life, she said simply. But more than that, he gave me a life worth living. He showed me what love looks like, what it should be. He was kind when the world had taught me to expect cruelty. He was patient when I was learning to trust. He was my partner in every sense of the word. The world is poorer for his loss, but richer for having had him in it. After Vincent's death, Natalie continued living at the ranch, surrounded by family. She was lonely for her husband, but found comfort in their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. She continued to visit the Carson house regularly, her presence a reminder to the women there that survival was possible, that happiness after trauma was achievable. She lived for 3 more years, remaining mentally sharp and physically mobile until near the very end. She died in October of 1933 at the age of 70, surrounded by family. Her last words were reported to be, "I am coming, Vincent. Wait for me." They buried her next to Vincent on the ranch they had built together, under a tree they had planted in the first year of their marriage. The headstones were simple, giving their names and dates and a single inscription that Tommy had chosen. They chose kindness. They chose love. They chose each other. The Carson house continued operating for many more decades, eventually becoming an official nonprofit organization that helped thousands of women escape domestic violence. Grace ran it until her retirement, and then it was taken over by her daughter and then her granddaughter, carrying on Natalie's legacy through multiple generations. The Wade Ranch remained in family hands, passed down through Tommy's line and continuing to thrive. The simple wooden sign Vincent had carved that first year was eventually replaced, but the original was preserved and hung in the ranch house as a reminder of where they had started. In 1983, on the 100th anniversary of that fateful night in the mountains, the family held a gathering at the ranch. Descendants of Vincent and Natalie came from all over the country, over 100 people who existed because a cowboy had chosen to help a stranger in need. They told stories, shared memories passed down through generations, and marveled at the legacy 2 people had built from a single act of kindness. The oldest among them, Tommy and Elizabeth's daughter Helen, then 85 years old, stood to speak. She had been 12 when her grandfather Vincent died and 15 when her grandmother Natalie passed. She remembered them clearly. "My grandparents taught us that love is a choice," she said, her voice still strong despite her age. That kindness is a decision. That we can build something beautiful even from the darkest circumstances. Their story is not just about romance, though they loved each other deeply. It is about human decency, about seeing someone in need and choosing to help, about building a life based on respect and partnership rather than control and fear. They left us more than just land or money. They left us a blueprint for how to live with integrity and compassion. She paused, looking around at the gathered family. Every single person here exists because Grandfather Vincent gave Grandmother Natalie his coat on a freezing night in the mountains, because he chose kindness when he could have chosen indifference, because she chose courage when she could have given up. Remember that. Honor that. Live lives that would make them proud. The family gathered around the two simple headstones under the tree, now ancient and gnarled but still strong. They placed flowers and told stories, and felt the presence of two remarkable people who had loved each other well and left the world better than they found it. As the sun set over the Wade Ranch that evening, painting the Nevada sky in shades of orange and purple just as it had on countless evenings over the past century, it was easy to imagine Vincent and Natalie sitting on their porch, holding hands and watching the stars emerge. Two people who had found each other in the darkness and built a life in the light. A cowboy who had offered his coat. A woman who had said nobody had been kind before. And from that simple exchange, a legacy of love that would endure for generations. Their story became legend in Elko and the surrounding areas. Parents told their children about the Wades, using their story to teach lessons about compassion and courage. The Carson House became a model for similar organizations across the West. The ranch continued to prosper, a testament to hard work and good stewardship of the land. But perhaps the most important legacy was the simplest one. Because of Vincent and Natalie Wade, countless people learned that one person can make a difference, that a single act of kindness can change a life. That love, real love, is possible even after trauma and pain. That we can choose to be better, to do better, to build something beautiful from even the darkest circumstances. In the end, their story was not about grand gestures or dramatic rescues, though it began with one. It was about two people who chose each other every single day for over 40 years, who built a life together based on mutual respect, genuine affection, and unwavering support, who faced challenges together and celebrated victories together, who created a family and a legacy that would outlive them both. It was about a coat offered on a freezing night, about kindness when it was least expected, about love found in the most unlikely circumstances. It was about second chances and new beginnings, and the profound truth that it is never too late to build the life you deserve. And in every woman who walked through the doors of the Carson house seeking refuge, in every Wade descendant who tried to live with integrity and compassion, in every person who chose kindness when indifference would have been easier, Vincent and Natalie's story continued. Their love story, born in the wild Nevada mountains in 1883, echoing through the generations, a reminder that the best stories are the ones built on the simple decision to help another human being in need. The coat itself, that thick wool coat Vincent had worn that fateful night, was preserved carefully by the family. It hung in the Carson house for many years, a tangible reminder of where everything had begun. Women seeking refuge would sometimes touch it, drawing strength from the knowledge that someone had once been cold and afraid just like them, and someone else had chosen to help, and from that had come safety and love and a whole new life. It was worn and patched, no longer suitable for actual use, but invaluable as a symbol. the symbol of what was possible when one person saw another's suffering and chose to act, the symbol of hope, of kindness, of the power of human compassion to change the world one person at a time. As the 20th century progressed, and the world changed in ways Vincent and Natalie could never have imagined, their story remained relevant, because the fundamental truths they had lived never changed. People still needed kindness. Women still needed refuge from violence. Love still had the power to heal and transform, and one person's choice to help could still change everything. Their graves on the ranch became a place of pilgrimage for many. Women who had been helped by the Carson house would sometimes visit, leaving flowers and saying quiet thank yous. Descendants would bring their own children and grandchildren, ensuring the story was never forgotten. And sometimes strangers, having heard the tale, would stop by to pay their respects to two people who had proven that love and kindness could triumph over cruelty and fear. The story of Vincent Wade and Natalie Carson Wade lived on, a light in the darkness, a reminder of what was possible, a testament to the enduring power of choosing love. And though they were gone, though over a century had passed since that cold night in the mountains, their legacy remained vibrant and alive, touching new lives, inspiring new acts of kindness, proving over and over again that one person really can make a difference, and love really can conquer all.